Hello, all the nerds out there. I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? Today, in this session, we're going to talk about UGC NET Paper 1, Unit 4, which is communication, right? And remember, it's an introductory session and especially on syllabus. So, we are just having an introduction of each unit now, and then we'll explore everything in depth later, right? So today we are going to talk about what all we are going to study in this particular unit. So first things first, let's kind of, demystify what communication really is. So in this session, we'll unpack its meaning, we'll explore the various types of communication, we'll also talk about its characteristics, like what make communication kind of superhero of human connection, right? So in this unit we'll be entering to the world of communication, and we'll just surface through it, and we'll talk about its communication model, like about the theories and all these things. And you must have heard about Aristotle model of communication, right? And it's pretty important because once they have asked question based on that, right? These are the masters of wisdom on persuasion and rhetoric, right? We'll also talk about Shannon and Weaver linear model, right? That they have asked in previous net about this particular model, which is Shannon and Weaver. Remember that it is a kind of classic linear journey from sender to receiver, which is a kind of your go-to for understanding the basics. Then we'll talk about Lawson model of communication. Another important, why we are talking about models and theories here, because these days in your GC net you are getting questions from theories, right? And we'll also talk about like Lasswell, like he breaks it down into who says what in which channel, and of course to whom, and what affect all these things. Then we'll talk about Berlo's SMCR, right? That code: sender, message, channel, and receiver. This will be a kind of roller coaster ride through the essential of elements of communication. Then we'll talk about Schramm model of communication. Have you ever thought about how communication is a two-way street? Well, Schramm agrees, and his model reflects the interactive nature of communication. We have another important model like transactional model of communication, and we'll also talk about other theories like helical model of communication, like a spiral staircase, right? And this model emphasizes the evolving nature of communication, which is a kind of moving forward. Then we have the constructionist model of communication, like how do we build meaning? And this model explored the construction of reality through communication. We have also like transmission communication model. In simple, it is a kind of simple and direct, meaning sending information from one point to another like throwing a ball. And these all theories are very important from UGC net perspective, so you should always pay more attention to these theories. You might not know what kind of question UGC net will throw at you, right? So you have to be well prepared. So these all we are going to talk about in our communication session. And later in the session we'll talk about the types of communication. And as you can see over your screen, there are various types of communication, and these all are very important because one way or the other you might encounter questions based on that. And every time they ask, like you see, horizontal or lateral, vertical communication, these all are quite important. And in this particular unit we'll start with like verbal and non-verbal communication, like from spoken words to meaningful gestures. And of course, as you know, communication is a multi-dimensional experience, as you know, right? And then we have like intrapersonal communication, which is like a conversation with yourself. And then we have interpersonal communication, which is kind of the magic that happens between two individuals like me and you, and the essence of human connection. We have formal communication, like the structure official way we convey information in organizational settings. And then Other important topics like, as I told you, horizontal or lateral communication, peer to peer communication, fostering teamwork and collaboration. We have vertical communication. Every time in UGC net they ask question based on that, right? So this vertical communication is the flow of information up and down. Remember that this is a kind of flow. It happens up and down like the hierarchy, and from top to bottom and vice versa. We have again like upward communication, when like employees communicate with higher authority, and they share ideas, feedback or connection, so information flows in one direction, like upward direction. Then we have like diagonal communication, like cutting across different levels and departments for efficient information flow. And then we'll also talk about informal communication, and starting with the very important topic, grapevine or grapevine, you can say, which is a very important topic because in the previous net exam they have asked it. And if you ask me in simple term, it's like the unofficial, sometime faster than light news, right? It is a kind of gossip. Then we have direct communication, which is a kind of clear, straightforward communication. And on the other hand, we have indirect communication, like reading between the lines, right? And then we have the continuous communication, which is a kind of the ongoing exchange of information, which is a constant flow, right? And then we have non-continuous communication, which is on the other hand is a communication with breaks and interruption. We have intragroup, as you can understand by the name, that this intragroup communication is an interaction between a specific group or team. Then we have intergroup communication, which is a communication between different groups or teams. Then we have synchronous communication. As you know, it is a kind of real-time communication. For example, live chats or webinar or whatever you communicate to each other. And then we have asynchronous communication, and this communication with it lag time, and it's like sending an email or writing a letter, all these thing. And then we have classroom communication, and this is kind of dynamic interaction between teachers and students and in an educational settings. We have public communication, which is kind of speaking to a large audience and maybe even on a stage. We have political communication. This is also a kind of art of conveying political messages to the public. We have intercultural communication, which stands for navigating communication across different cultures. Then we have organizational communication, which, as you know, is the web of communication within organization. And we have family communication. As you know, it's a kind of heartbeat of family, like how families share their thoughts, emotion and information. There are so many terms in this communication that we'll talk about. And of course, as you know, we have mass communication, and that is the powerhouse of reaching large audience. Think of like media, newspaper and broadcasts, right? And then we'll talk about effective communication, which is very important topic. And as you know, at least one question you will definitely get from this particular session. And in this particular session, we'll take a ride into the realm of effective communication. As you know, it's a very important unit. We'll talk about exploring verbal and non-verbal communication. We'll talk about intercultural and group communication and the intriguing dynamic of classroom communication. First, as you see over your screen, we have verbal communication, which is just simple like a written communication, or like from everyday conversation to formal presentation. Verbal communication is the backbone of expressing thoughts and ideas. Then we have written communication. As name suggests, the written word hold its own power. Written communication goes beyond speaking, involving clarity, precision and the art of crafting messages on paper or a screen. And we'll also talk about factors of effective verbal communication, like have you ever wondered what makes a spoken words impactful? We'll also, delve into the factors of this effective verbal communication. We'll uncover the secrets to clear, meaningful expression, which is very important. And then non-verbal communication, like, sometimes actions speak louder than words, right? Non-verbal communication includes like gesture, body language, facial expression, and the silent but powerful companion to verbal messages. We have social cues, which is important. Last time they have asked question based on that. It is a kind of intricate dance of communication. Social cues guides our interactions and helping us to navigate the unspoken rules of engagement. Another important term, as you can see over your screen, kinesics, and it is so important that they have asked like 5 times continuously. You're getting question based on that, which is like body language, that takes center stage with kinesics, and it is the study of body movements and gestures that add layers to our verbal expressions. We have oculesics, which is very important. As a simple word, blink rate. Ever thought about the blink of an eye conveying a message? It's equally important. We have proxemics, which is related to distance and physical environments, and also appearance, like how close is like too close or little bit distance between each other. So this proxemics dives into the nuances of personal space, distance, and the impact of physical surroundings on communication. Then we have another term like paralanguage, which is simple, a voice, right? And it is like beyond words. Paralanguage explores the variation in tone, pitch, verbal cues, which actually shape the meaning of our messages. And haptic, which is like touch, right? Whatever you touch, like in your screen you touch, right? This is also a kind of haptics, touch, which is as a form of communication. This can convey comfort, like empathy, or even discomfort. Haptic explore the role of touch in human interaction. Then we have chronemics, which is just the use of time. Time is equally important in communication. Like chronemics investigates how the use of time influence communication, from like punctuality to timing in conversation. We have intercultural communication. By the name you can understand it's a kind of the global village thrives on intercultural communication, where understandings and respecting diverse cultures are paramount for effective interaction. And we will also talk about group communication. So it is a kind of the dynamics of communication shift in a group setting. Like group communication explores how messages unfold within a collective. We have classroom communication, which is simply communication happens in between teachers and students and the way they communicate. And we will also, in that particular session, we'll also talk about barriers to effective classroom communication, and we'll also talk about what can make effective communication in the classroom. So these all things we're gonna talk about in this session. And then we will have another important, which is like barriers to effective communication, and one question you will get it, like physical barrier. Like last time they have asked about the physical barrier, and it includes like noise like and then we have like architecture, we have technical difficulties, then we'll have time and distance, then information overload, and environment, the background noise that competes the attention. So this is all physical barrier. Then we'll have like semantic barriers, which is like the literal misinterpretation that happens, like denotative barriers, like connotative barriers. We'll also talk about organizational barrier, like the system design, like negative organizational climate. We'll talk about excessive authority layers. Then psychological barrier, simple, the mental shift that happens in communication. These are all barriers are quite important. We'll also talk about social barriers, like gender barriers, poverty, conflict, and racism. We'll have also like cultural barriers that we'll talk about, like language, stereotypes, value, and beliefs, all these things. And at the end of this particular unit we will have mass media and society discussion. We'll talk about all these things in our this unit 4, which is communication, right? So in simple word, at the end of this unit, we dive into the captivating realm of mass media and society. We'll explore the rich tapestry of media history, its traditional and contemporary forms, and the profound impact it has on on our lives. We'll also start our journey with the history of mass media, like a journey, through begins with the evolution of mass media from ancient prints to the digital age right now. And from print to recording, cinema, radio, television, and the internet. These all are important, and these days, mobile phone also. These all evolution we'll talk about. And of course, we'll also talk about the timeline of mass media, which is quite important. And we have the list, when it began and what is the modern technology. All these stuff are there in the timeline of mass media. We'll talk about traditional media first in the session, like, legendary tales to folklore, riddles and jokes, and of course to the captivating worlds of drama, theater, natak, nukkad, notanki. All these stuff are, comes in traditional media. Then we have another type of media, which is like print media and electronic media. In fact, here we'll talk about print media like magazine, newspaper, book, and in electronic media, we'll talk about broadcasting, film, internet, and the ever evolving realm of computer and video games. We'll also talk about what is old media, new media, and social media, right? By the name, you will understand what all are these things. And like I told you, in old media is a kind of, dynamic to new media and the interactive realm of social media. And it's a journey through the evolving landscape of human connection. All these things we'll talk about anyway, right? And as you know, media is more than information. It's a kind of tool with multifaceted purposes. Like, it dwells into the purpose and function of mass media, including advocacy, advertising, publicity, marketing, propaganda, public relations, surveillance, gatekeeping. You just name it, everything is there. And every single stuff. It is not going to be a long session. This is just introductory, and as you in introductory session itself we have covered like everything, and two more session will take on this for unit 4, and we'll get it done, and we'll get it over with unit 4 anyway. So that's all we are going to talk about. So guys, that's all for the introduction, and in our next session we'll talk about another unit. And as I told you, it's an introduction right now. It's not a long session, but next we'll talk about all these things. Anyway, thanks for watching, and of course, please take a moment and subscribe to the channel for more such videos. Thanks and have a good day. Bye-bye.